Today, we are going to configure a VPN on-demand connection to an AWS Direct Connect using a virtual private gateway along with a private virtual interface. And to start this, we're going to go over a diagram to visualize what we're doing. So on the left-hand side, looking at our diagram, we see the customer premise that has a connection to the Lumen MPLS network itself. A VRF is a virtual routing and forwarding table. And so a customer could have one or many of those, but we're just have a simple single connection here to this VPN. And then from this VPN, we are going to create a connection or a direct connect to AWS. And we're going to do that across the Lumen NNI that connects, or network-to-network interface that connects directly to AWS. So let's get started. We're going to get started by going over to our console. And within our AWS console, the first thing that we're going to want to do is create a virtual private gateway. A couple ways to get there. I have my recently visited portions of the AWS console I've gone to, or you could click on this AWS symbol here. And you're able to go to all services. And then you would also be able to go down to VPC. So we're going to go into VPC. And we're going to go to the virtual private gateway dashboard right here. And we're going to create a new virtual private gateway. I'm just going to make a name here that I'll recognize in the future. Then we're going to use the Amazon default autonomous system number, which is 64,512. We'll go ahead and create that virtual private gateway. Now we can see here that it's in a pending status. Once that gateway becomes available, we'll be able to attach to it. But for now, I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to clean out this old gateway that I don't need anymore. So we're not confused. And now while that is taking place, we're going to go in and we're going to copy our AWS account ID. And we're going to go into Control Center to where we'll add this connectivity from our virtual private network into the direct connect of AWS using a virtual private gateway. I'm going to click on Services, and then I'm going to click on Add Services. It's already assumed that I have a Control Center account that I'm able to log into. And then you'll see several options here under networking. And the option that we are going to choose for this demonstration is this VPN on demand connection. So we're going to click Add, and we're going to select our customer ID. This is a test customer ID. If you had signed up with services from Lumen, you would have your own account ID. And under that account ID, you could have multiple billing account numbers. It's necessary that you know which billing account number is associated with the VPN that you want to terminate to AWS. I'm going to go with this account number. I'm going to make a service nickname. This service nickname is something that in the future, if I want to make any changes or I want to disconnect this connection, this is how I'll recognize what that is. So I'm going to put test PPG7. And then down here in this, where I'm at right here with the VRFs, or the virtual routing and forwarding tables, these are all the different VRFs that we have. Again, this is a test account, so you'll see a lot of them. Most customers will see one, or they'll see a few. They won't see tons of them in general. So I'm just going to select a VRF. Remember, if we go back to our drawing, this is our VPN VRF, and we're connecting from that VRF into AWS. And so that's the connection that we're building. After I've chosen my VRF, I'm going to put in my account ID, and then I'm going to select my on-ramp. In this case, I'm going to select Los Angeles. And then I'm going to be prompted with different bandwidths that are available to me at that on-ramp. I'm going to pick 50 megs. You have the option to do hourly. So if you're an iTential shop or an infrastructure as code shop, and you tend to spin things up and tear them down based on workloads, this hourly rate might be advantageous. Otherwise, if you want to just set it and leave it in place because it's part of your production network and it doesn't change a lot, you could just pick monthly. I'm going to pick monthly and 50 megabits per second, and I'll be presented with my price, and then I'm going to continue on. And now I'm presented with a few different things. The first thing is my autonomous system number. Notice here it's that 64,512 that I mentioned before, because that's the default that's used on AWS. However, had you chosen to change that ASN or autonomous system number on your virtual private gateway, you would have to put the same thing in here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick whether this is a primary connection or a backup connection. And what I mean by that is that you could create multiple connections from your backbone to AWS. One could be east, one could be west. The idea being is that we set preferences in our backbone that would prefer one connection over the other. So that's what that's for. I'm going to leave this as primary. And then we have several different routing options here. One of these routing options is to basically advertise RFC 1918 space only. And that's a good option for AWS, mainly because it really limits the amount of prefixes you advertise from the MPLS network into AWS. AWS will shut the BGP session down if you exceed 100. The other options, if you want to get more granular, are to advertise all routes other than those specified using one of these BGP community strings. The other is to deny everything other than things that have an allow community string of 6745:8610, or you can put in the aggregates that you want to allow. So I'm going to stick with this 1918 option because it works the best for AWS. And then lastly, from a routing policy perspective, you have the capability to advertise a default route from your MPLS VPN into AWS or not. So keep in mind, this routing policy we talked through is representative of what's advertised from this center box, which is your VPN backbone that could have multiple sites connected to it towards AWS. Okay. So we're going to continue on past the routing policy, and we are presented with what our configuration looks like and what we chose for the different options, what the VRF is, or the virtual routing and forwarding table, what the billing method is, what the bandwidth was, what our pricing is, what on-ramp we went to within which region for AWS. I'm going to go ahead and submit this order. That's going to take about 5 minutes before it's actually showing up that it's provisioned. So you'll be presented with this sort of chart that shows what stage the provisioning is in, and you'll start to see different attributes of this connection filled in. The most important attributes to us or you as a customer as you're doing this is you want to see what this BGP authentication key is, and you also want to see what the router IP is. Keep in mind, in this connection, the peering between AWS is taking place between a Lumen provider edge NNI router and the AWS network. So there is no direct peering between the customer prem in AWS, all the peering takes place between our network, or Lumen's network, I should say, and AWS. Okay, so now we're going to start to see things built in, such as our BGP authentication key. We're going to see what the VLAN ID is within the AWS infrastructure. We won't need that. What we will need is this authentication key and these router IPs. And we can see it's made its way through being configured, which is why we see some of those parameters, and now it's in the activation process. Okay, so our direct connect connection from Lumen to AWS has been established. Our virtual private gateway is still in a pending status. We're going to go look at the direct connect itself. Within the AWS console. Okay, so we see our direct connect here, and we should be able to match this connection ID, what some folks call a DXCon, with the connection ID in our connector attributes. So it ends in NEEB, NEEB. So that's our direct connect. We're going to go ahead and accept this hosted connection. We go back to our main menu, take advantage of what we've already been in, look at our VPC and see what our virtual private gateway looks like. Check the status of our virtual private gateway. Okay, this new virtual private gateway that we've created for the purposes of this test is now available. So we can move forward with creating our virtual interface, or VIF. So I'm going to go back to the Direct Connect. Then I'm going to create my virtual interface. It's going to be a private interface. And I'm going to make a name for it that I recognize so I can come back if I need to. I'm going to keep it on my AWS account versus another AWS account. And for gateway type, I'm going to select virtual private gateway. And my new virtual private gateway shows up that I created. I'm going to leave the VLAN alone. And for the ASN of our on-premise router, I'm going to put in 3549. Now, the reason I put in 3549 is because this PE sits on the Lumen backbone, and that is 3549. And that is pairing directly with 64512, which is AWS's autonomous system number. I'm going to go into additional settings, and I don't expect you to memorize this. You would be able to see that in this connector information, the Lumen ASN 3549. So I'm going to go back to my virtual interface that I'm creating, and under additional settings, I'm going to put in the router IP of what is considered my router IP, which in this case is going to be the Lumen router. After that, I'm going to put in what IP address was assigned to, in this case, AWS, but the cloud provider router IP address. And this is assigned by Lumen. put that IP address in. And then lastly, I'm going to want to keep things secure, so I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of that BGP authentication key that was provided to me by Lumen. I'm going to add that to the connection. Now I'm going to create the virtual interface. So you can see here that our direct connect is in a state of available at 50 megs, US West 1, Northern California region. And then down here is my virtual interface, and it's in a pending state. So we're going to wait for that to come up. Okay, so we see that our state has come up. So not only do we have our direct connect is available, but if we go into that direct connect, we can see that our virtual interface has become available. And if we go into that interface, we can see that the state is available and the BGP status is up. So now we are exchanging routes between our MPLS network and our VPC in AWS, or our virtual interface in AWS. In our next chapter, we are going to show how to disconnect this connection.